Hair dye. They destroy our float tanks. They shut us down. What do we do? How do we prevent it? Swim caps, apparently a white towel test. Let's talk with Kim and our guest host tonight, Kat Roberts. Fantastic in-depth episode about hair dye. Cannot wait for you guys to listen to this one. I'm really excited about it. Of course, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor first, HelmBot. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And not only are they our sponsor, but we truly believe in HelmBot. It's the easiest ad read ever because Helm is the software built from the ground up specifically so that you're able to run your float center. You're able to keep all your metrics of your water temperature, how much hydrogen peroxide is in there, if that's what you're using. I mean, any metrics you want, you can customize it too. And also employee scheduling, customer scheduling, everything you could possibly want is built into this, including the ongoing logbook that for a few years we weren't doing a good job of. Well, we've brought that back up, and now this connection that goes on throughout the shifts and understanding why maybe something wasn't done because there was something else going on with another customer creates this emotional connectivity that makes the shop run smoother. And I love it. We love HelmBot. Don't take my word for it. Schedule a free tour. Have them walk you through everything it can do for you. And oh my gosh, I'm going to say, grab life by the helm. I am so sorry. That is not their ad, but I keep saying it. Helmbot.com is where you want to go. Schedule a free tour and see if it's right for you. All right, let's start the show. Welcome back to another episode of Art of the Float, where float centers thrive. My name is Dylan, and I own the Float Shop in Portland, Oregon, with my lovely, beautiful, intelligent wife, Sandra.
Hey everybody, it's Kim Hannon. I co-own Tsukino Float Center in Salt Cave in Southern Indiana with my husband, Graham.
Who's beautiful and intelligent as well. Yes. And we have a guest. We have a guest host on tonight. Would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. It's Kat Roberts, and I'm in Canada, Fredericton, New Brunswick, to be precise. And I own Surface Float by myself. Yeah.
Ooh, nice. Solo.
Solo. Yeah.
Nice. Welcome, Kat. Thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight.
No problem.
We have a very specific thing we want to talk about, and today's a little bit of a mini episode. We'll be a little bit shorter than usual, but we're going to be talking about hair dye in our float tanks. It popped up in the Float Collective, as it seems to throughout the year. This is a topic that comes up, and Kat is a self-proclaimed expert on hair dye, so we figured we'd bring in the expert and talk about it. I know Kim has some strong ideas. I used to have what I thought was a good plan for hair dye, and that has since been proven false. And so maybe I'll share that as well. But I think we've got to get ourselves on this one. I don't know if more people are dyeing their hair, if it's like more fashionable or what, but it seems to be a problem that is increasing rather than flatline or decreasing. So, but before we get to that, I do just want to ask, how many float tanks do you have, Kat?
We have 4. Yes.
You do? Wow. That's quite the operation. Do you have you said I assume you have a team that you're
we have a
with?
Good crew. There's between the massage therapist and the float staff, we have 11 people on staff.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. Wow. That's quite the operation.
Yeah.
Nice. Congratulations. How long have you been open for?
3 years. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
3 years this spring. So almost 3 years.
Does it feel like things are running, maybe not smoothly, but you have a mental grip on operations?
Definitely, especially because we opened during the pandemic. So it was a rough start. And now we feel like we're kind of, this is what it was meant to be like if we had opened during, normal times. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's quite the crucible to start out in. My goodness. I do just also want to make a quick note that Kat is kind enough to join us from the airport. She's about to get on an airplane, but she was willing to join us and talk about this. So I appreciate that. And there will also be a little bit of background noise coming from her microphone.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Just as an FYI, no need to apologize. We're grateful that you're here. Really, thank you. So I will just say, probably since mine was the least restrictive, is basically, I think it was 2 weeks. I don't even think we said 3 weeks, but maybe it started out as two and then bumped up to 3 weeks for hair dye. And just saying, yeah, if it's past that point, if you're not seeing color in the wash come out, then you're good. As it turns out, people don't necessarily see the color in the shower, so they're not the best judges of that. And while I'm a huge fan of hooking up a sub pump to a hose and putting an RV filter to the end of that hose and running that to filter, that's a very, very, very low flow rate from what we're used to of our spin cycle. We washing machines. What do they call that again? Basically how. Yeah, and the amount of water getting through so that essentially the entire body of water would run through that 3 times over. We're used to that being done in 10, 15 minutes. And with an RV pump, that's like an overnight project. And if the water looks bad enough, then you're still canceling floats that day. And we had a hair dye incident recently that was so bad, and it was so gross because it looked, I don't even want to say it, but like it was, it looked like something horrible had happened in the water. And it was just honestly just like blood red. So it was kind of spooky looking. And our float tank has blue fiberglass. And I think that just enhanced the depth of the color, the richness of the blood look. So that was pretty disgusting. But so we couldn't float people in it. And I actually ended up buying another sub pump and another RV filter. By the way, pro tip, I just want to get this out of the way. If you are doing this method, RV filters just have charcoal in them. So it can you can have drinkable water when you're traveling, but also it grabs the hair dye out of there as well. Bleed it first. And by that, I mean just run your sub pump in some tap water, in a bucket of tap water, and let the RV filter run. You'll just see black water come out for a little while, minutes for sure. Even though you're urgently trying to get your float tank clean, give it time for that to bleed out before you run that in your float tank, or else you're going to be coloring your float tank even more. But yeah, I grabbed a second sub pump and a second RV filter and ran them both overnight, and there was almost no visual difference whatsoever. And that's when Sandra and I had to have the conversation with our manager Abe about do we change our policy here? And we have since then, based off your guys' feedback. So I'd love to actually, Kat, if I can hand it to you first. What's your experience with hair dye, and what conclusions have you come to?
So in the first 3 months of us being open, we also had a hair dye policy, which I thought was pretty good based on what was in the collective, and having no experience myself yet with this. I thought, okay, we've got it covered. But we had a client come. She had a hat on, didn't tell us she had hair dye, floated, and stained the water purple, dark purple. So she came out of the float kind of mortified, embarrassed, and very defensive too, right? Because she knew that we did have a policy around it. And I wasn't there because it was the evening float. Shoot. So I got called in, and I went in and looked at the tank and oh crap. So I did have a little bit of know-how in what to try. So I added a lot of hydrogen peroxide, ran the filter. We tried the RV filter with the carbon. That didn't do anything. So after 4 hours of us trying to kind of determine, are we going to keep this water or not? I mean, we could have tried to do it overnight, but we had a full day the next day. And
do
we gamble?
Yeah.
Our tank was up for, I think we were planning to do like a water turnover anyways soon, if I remember correctly. So I just said, let's just call it. And we'll have time. If we start right now, we'll have time to get the new salt and get the water in, clean the fiberglass, and any remaining stains, because the purple dyed like a big purple ring around the water line as well.
Of course. Sure.
And it was a big job. Like I left the float center at 5 a.m. Like, because you have to break up the salt and leave it to a point where you can just let the pump finish. But it was a lot. And
hashtag float life.
The salty life.
Business owner life.
In the end, this client wasn't going to be able to pay our water replacement fee. Like there was no way.
How did that conversation, like, how did you come to that
So
conclusion? It's interesting.
I said to her, our policy is very clear in the waiver that you signed that you will be charged. I think it was $12.50, at the time. And she said, well, this was a gift card. Like I think it was a gift card. Like I didn't even buy this float for myself. And, your form said 8 weeks. I think it was not 8 weeks. Like for that much hair dye to still be in the hair, it probably was early, but she did get very defensive.
And that's something they could dispute
Exactly.
too.
Exactly. And so I decided not to turn it into a fight. And I just said, if you pay for the hours that it cost me to have staff stay, because it was me and another person that ended up staying to get the tank up and running again. Like if you pay for, their wages and the overtime, then that's where I'm willing to meet you. And she agreed to that. So she did pay some, but we didn't get, our full water and salt replacement amounts.
Yeah, so, of course, right? Yeah.
Since then, I asked a bunch of hairstylists about hair dye. And I said, okay, what is it in the different hair dyes? Like, why are some hair dyes okay and others aren't? And so I got like a lesson in hair dyes. I have ADHD, so I hyperfocus. And so I dedicated like a few weeks of like learning about hair dye. And,
all right. You are the expert. Okay.
Wow. I said that as a joke, kind of. I did learn a lot about it. So the rainbow colors, like the reds and oranges, yellow, green, blue, purple, pinks, the color molecule is too large. So it doesn't actually get absorbed into the hair follicle. It just kind of wraps around the hair follicle. And so that's why it's so unstable. And anything that is like considered like a color stripping agent or like a cleaning agent will pull that color right out or right off the hair. And Epsom salt is used by hairstylists in some situations to remove or strip color off of hair. So they were like, yeah, no wonders your water got so much color in it, because they're literally soaking for over an hour in Epsom salt, right? And so the smaller color molecules in the permanent hair dyes, like the blondes, the browns, the blacks, caramels, and even some red, like the darker red colors, those are small enough to actually get absorbed into the hair follicle, and they're stable. Like they'll stay in the hair after a certain period of time. And after a couple washes, once you remove the residue that's like on the outer part of the hair follicle. So that's why our policy is a week if you have these types of hair dyes. And any other hair dyes, you either come to do a test so that we can check with actual Epsom salt solution, not just water at home in the shower, because the water at home might not be, it doesn't have a stripping chemical in it, right?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So then that's what we call our white towel test, where you come and we check your hair.
And what is that white towel? Like, are they in the lobby and you pour some water on there?
We look at what float tank they're coming to float in. We get water from that float tank, because your chemistry could be slightly different, Also, we use hydrogen peroxide, which also will remove color from things like fabrics and stains and things like that. So you're as good as your water chemistry might be, and there will be slight differences in each float tank. So we always get water from the tank they're coming, and we drape a clean towel over their shoulder, get a strand of their hair, and saturate the white towel in the Epsom salt solution, make sure it gets like really wet in their hair, and we rub it. We just rub for like a minute. And then you'll see the color almost instantly in the hair. That is like when the color is going to come out, it's pretty quick. Like you'll see it coming off on the towel. So I had to do that for a gal who had pink hair dye. She said, oh, it's almost all washed out. Like you can't see it. I'm like, well, I can see it. So I'm going to do I can't let you float unless you want to give me $2,000 and pay for like my lost business from the next day. That always makes them kind of nervous laugh. Anyways,
I like that you're so upfront and clear about it, though.
I think you have to be, because you have to set that precedent, and it also prevents them from, like, if they love floating, they are going to realize, like, oh, I have to either stop dyeing my hair this color or these colors and prioritize my float practice, right? Yeah,
that was me.
Yeah. And to answer your kind of question about earlier, like, are more people dyeing their hair? I think it is a trend to have like mermaid hair, rainbow hair, like all these different cool colors. So we are seeing an uptake in that. But all of our clients that are members and are coming regularly, or even not members, but people that come on a regular basis, they call and say, oh, I just dyed my hair. This is the date. Is it okay if I book a float for this date? And then, like, they're aware. We've kind of trained them to think about it. It's something that's on their radar. So it helps get the stress off of us to, you know, to have to say, oh, did we get their hair dye status? You know, because it is a question on our intake form. But as you know, do people actually read those? Are they the ones actually filling it out, or is it their friend or partner that booked them in for the float that's filling it out for them? Like, you just never know for sure, right?
And people tend to forget if it's something that didn't apply to them the first time that they came to float, and then they've been, you know, they've been floating with you for 2 or 3 years, they've forgotten about it, and, you know, they suddenly start dyeing their hair at that point. What they signed years ago or months ago even, they've completely forgotten. That's why we ask every single appointment. Whether you're a member and you float with us weekly, it doesn't matter. It's the first question. We actually have online booking questions, and we ask it when we're on the phone. It's the first question we put out there every single time.
Yeah.
So all of our guests know it, and they can recite our policy to you.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Wow. You guys are taking this very seriously, more seriously than we have been, and we're paying the price, obviously. Have you done the test and sent somebody home?
Yes. It's terrible.
Wow.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
One lady,
but you got to do what you got to do. Okay.
Basically lost it in the lobby. She started yelling and said, I took the day off work today, and, you know, we're really, really sorry. You didn't tell us on your intake form. Like, she clicked no on the intake form, and
come on,
or I forget what it was. I think she no, sorry, I'm remembering wrong. She did say yes, but she said it's all gone. Like, I did have it dyed at some point, but it's all gone. But when she showed up, it was vibrant still.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
People kind of trying to work it through for themselves. Interesting.
And so that's what kind of makes us a little wary, because we want to believe people, and we want to not have to take it to the next step and actually say, did you tell us the truth? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But sometimes you have to, because either they don't remember when they dyed their hair, or they have selective memory, or they're choosing to kind of spin it in a way where it doesn't make them look like they're going to, you know, in quotations, be in trouble, right? Like, they want to float. So they're trying to spin it and, like, well, it's almost gone. Like, you should let me float.
Right. Yeah.
There's also, you have to take into account how frequently that person washes their hair, because some people wash their hair daily, and that will definitely pull the color out a lot faster, and it won't bleed quite as much faster. Some people will only wash their hair, you know, twice a week, once every 10 days. And if you're not washing your hair more frequently, then that color is still sitting there, and it will come out absolutely in the float tank. So even having a policy like wait X number of days might provide a bit of a false sense of security, because they've waited that long, but in that time they haven't washed their hair, or they may have only washed it once. You know, and so it's, how frequently are they washing it? What type of hair? A lot of the box dyes that you can purchase at, you know, at all of the stores and DIY will typically bleed a lot more and for a longer duration than going to a professional salon and having someone color your hair there. And some are vegan dyes, some are non-vegan dyes. That makes a difference, you know, in the permanent nature of the dye itself. There are just so many variables to it all. And that's why whenever we were opening the center, if you knew me back before we opened, I had red hair, and it would change in different intensities of red, from strawberry blonde all the way to like fire engine red. And I stopped dyeing my hair so that I could float. And then eventually I left it my natural color for a few years. And then eventually I started going to blonde, because when you're highlighting or going to a lighter color, you're stripping color out, not depositing color on. But it's funny because I did have an instance last week where I was scheduled to float on Sunday, and I had my hair done on Friday, and we decided to go deeper, darker at the roots. And I was like, oh, we just applied color to my hair. I have to cancel my float. And I was just like, no, why did we do that? And so the next time I go back to see my stylist again, I have to remind him we are not doing that, because I want to hop in the tank anytime and not even have to think about that.
Yes.
So it all makes a difference. And that's why, a blanket policy of wait X amount of time is just, you're really, it's better than nothing, but it's still very, very risky because there are just so many variables in there.
Based on how often I shower, it would be a year or so before I could float. So that's good to know. I should not dye my hair. Okay.
And Kat, I love your idea of doing the white towel test, at the center and having your team to be able to administer that. So people, it's really undeniable at that point. We've had people who've come in and I've seen their vibrant colors. And I'm like, oh, hey, I don't know about that. And they're like, no, I promise I tested it and And, we've been lucky on those so far, but we've also had a couple of folks who've kind of sneak in under the radar, or we've had people who've tried swim caps and we've ended up with dyed. Yeah. We've ended up with stained swim caps that we obviously can't reuse. Functionally it's fine, but who wants to look at that and go, ooh, there's purple dye on it. Like, what is this? Yeah. So we've, lost some swim caps with that, but they're also, they don't seal. And so if you think about when you're wearing a swim cap in the water, you're typically swimming, you're in motion. And so if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see my handy little gestures here. But if you're swimming this way, the water is going up and over. And so the water doesn't have a chance to hit those seams because you're in movement in an opposite direction typically than the water. If you're floating, however, you're lying supine and there's a little seam at the back of the head and typically around the face. And that water has nothing, there's no pressure, there's no force. All it can do is just seep in there. And so all that water starts to seep into the back of the head. And typically this back area is where you're going to have a lot of color deposited. And so that color can then just start to seep out during the float. It also, as they guessed, I've tested it so that I could speak about it, specifically. It starts to tickle the back of your head. And then the cap itself is usually pretty uncomfortable.
I was going to say, if it's a well-fitted one, it is barely getting it over, right?
It's tight. I could not finish my float because it was so distracting and I just had to get out. And then I still ended up, a lot of women will do it, and men too, who don't want to wash their hair. And so they'll wear them then. I still ended up having to wash my hair because the salt water creeped in, and so we still provide them for guests. And I have some who love them, but I tell them not to use it for the purpose of securing their hair dye. Or, if it's one of those, you want to reduce the likelihood of your hair getting wet, and you're okay with the sensation that it provides, go for it. But it is not a security blanket, and it is not going to prevent your hair from getting wet. It's not going to prevent your hair or dye from leaking out. So.
We do have swim caps that have a lot of extra space up top, particularly for people with dreadlocks who don't want their dreads water and salt logged. Just as a random bit there about shower caps or swim caps. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you guys say for swim caps being a prevention for hair dye getting into your float tanks? Is it absolutely a no-go? Is it like, it's going to reduce it? Or is it absolute garbage?
Well, we did let one guest who almost passed the white towel test. There was a little bit of dye in it, but it wasn't a lot. And I said, okay, I just had I don't know, just intuitively, I was like, I think it's going to be okay, but you have to wear a swim cap. And I didn't feel like the whole time she was in there, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I hope the water's okay. So I never did it again because, like you said, Kim, it was completely stained on the inside when she left. And so I said it did prevent the water from, if the dye got in the water, it wasn't enough that it was visible or had like a lasting impact, but it was a close call. So I would say it's like a 2 or 3 on a scale from 1 to 10. Like it's not reliable.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Did I mess up in how I explained that? So 0 is garbage and 10 is perfect seal, like absolutely good. So you're saying very
I
not
would
good.
say for hair dye. Yeah.
No good, very bad. Don't do it. Okay.
I agree. I agree.
You
I would
agree?
not use it as a preventative measure at all. It will reduce the likelihood, but they still have to be willing to take the risk. And, we tell folks that it's going to be up to $1,500 to, repair any fiberglass stains, to potentially replace the cost of the salt, which I probably need to raise that price given the cost of Epsom salt has increased as well. And any lost appointments, overtime for staff members who have to stay and deal with it. And just, to explain to people all that goes on. Like, we're not just trying to say we don't like your dyed hair. There are actual tangible costs that are associated with hair dye in the tank. And I think that's the part that we need to do a better job as an industry of explaining. It's not just about, if you dye your hair, you shouldn't do this. It's not just about, like, it could ruin your hair. Like, it's possible that it's going to ruin your hair color and you've wasted your money, but it's also going to have major implications on us and on the guests who depend on our services to, relieve pain, to get by, really. So I think once people understand that, they're a little more willing to abide by those policies.
Yeah, it's all in the conversation that you have with them and how you present the issue to them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I imagine putting a $1,500 price tag in front of them does make them question if this is the right time, or if they maybe accidentally fibbed a little bit on the sheet. That maybe they'll be a little bit more aware of what's going on.
And I do like the white. I do like the white towel test because you can show them. Like, look at what it did with a small amount of solution, right? And so, yeah.
I do imagine your place, like, you have a full separate lab where you get the dye, you get the towel, and then things are spinning around, and you have microscopes and magnifying glasses checking this out. It sounds very intense. But no, I like that because you said it was like barely visible, but you still were like, you need to wear a swim cap. So it's, if you see color, it's game over. Is that what I'm
now
hearing?
It is. That's our policy now. Any color color.
Yeah, because that'll be our policy going forward.
You just can't take the risk.
I need to take this.
Yeah, and the stress of it too, right? And you know what? When it comes down to it, they're not going to be able to relax as much either. They're going to be thinking about it the whole time. And especially if they're wearing a swim cap, like that digs into your skin. A lot of them come out early, like you said, Kim. You couldn't finish your float. And our guests will say, I got a headache, like it's just like a pressure headache.
Oh,
so
sure.
it's actually, it's like, well, you're not going to get the benefits as you should be getting them. Like, you're not going to get the experience that you would if you come back when it's actually all out of your hair.
Whew. Thank you, guys. I hope this is great for our listeners. I know it's very good for me. So striking out swim caps, and maybe as like a guideline, talking about the date of when you did it, how long it's been. But Kim, specifically, you talking about the different types of hair dye, the number of times people are showering. That's great. So we got to just go to Kat's test. Well, that'll be the official name. Kat's,
let's give it the cat test.
The cat test, yeah. That's it. I feel like we could just put a pin in this one. Is there anything else you guys want to share?
Put it on your intakes.
You feel like people should know?
Intakes, and like Kim, like put it in lots of places so that you're making it super
confirmation email
aware. Like, you're making your clients super aware. Like, it won't come as a surprise to them when you call them and say, hey, I see you have hair dye. We have a policy around hair dye. We just need to know what kind of, because that's what our intake says. What kind of hair dye is it? Is it permanent, semi-permanent, washout, henna? Like, there's so many different ones, right? And find out.
Are you willing to share that? I don't want to steal something proprietary, something that you've created, but I'm really curious.
Yeah,
I can. Not only the things that you list, but how you gauge based off of those things of like, yeah, henna's cool, but bright pink, no. Like, you have a scale of level of alertness for your for your clients, but for your employees based off of what type of hair dye they have.
The client ticks it off on the intake. Like, we try not to overload the client when they're doing their intake. If they tick that box, it prompts myself and my staff to send a follow-up communication to them.
Okay.
I'm happy to share that. Yeah.
Cool. May I ask what scheduling software you're using? Helm? Float Helm? Fantastic. Wow. Helmbot.com. Don't take my word for it. Take Kat's. She's a hair dye expert. Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you. And if I can ask afterwards for even a little bit of that copy, I'd love to take a look at that and potentially share that with everyone, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. My goodness. As always, what should the name of this episode be? I was thinking When Float Tanks Die. Is that too morbid?
I love it. I love it.
Okay,
I
great.
like it too, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
Before we go, I just want to give a few shout outs. Of course, I mean, Helmbot again. What a fantastic scheduling software. And I say it with a smile and with a smirk, but because Kat gave that little plug in there at the end. But we truly are big fans of Helmbot. And thank you for your support, Helmbot. Thanks to Mindful Solutions, Mindful with 2 L's, mindful.solutions if you want to check out what Kim can do for you for social media. And thanks to producer Olga for producing our show each and every week. Thanks to Kim and Kat. Thank you, Kat. Thanks for guesting on our episode here. I really appreciate it. And of course, Kim, thanks. It's so good to see you again. And are there any other thanks? Thanks to Deepest Darkest for our theme song. Until next time, we'll see you next week.